Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to share with you kind of like a get ready with me because things here in Toronto have finally reopened. We've got a birthday party to go to tonight and we can finally dine indoors. It's definitely warm here in Toronto and my air conditioning went out, so that is why I am filming in a different area today. I am in my living room and I'm going to share with you my best tips and tricks for preventing sweaty, oily breakthrough with makeup that you want to last a little bit longer and look good. So without any further ado, let's get right into this video. So today's video, I've got a few new products that I want to play with, and the first one is I have Auric Glow Lust in Morganite 2.0. Auric is a brand created by Samantha Ravindal, who is a YouTube beauty creator, and they tweaked this shade in specific to make it a little bit lighter and more neutral compared to the original shade. So that's one product I have to test out. And the other one is, I can't believe I bought this, but this is the Hourglass Curator Eyeshadow Palette, and I ordered mine through Sephora. So I have Fox, B, May, Yes, and Pry. The first thing I want to do is prep my skin for success. Now, I've done my skincare routine, and I use a sunscreen that is a very lightweight texture, and that was quite moisturizing because I didn't want to use a moisturizer and a sunscreen, so I kind of want to limit my steps. So I'm using the Verdio Hydrating UV Moisture Gel. So this is a very lightweight, all-chemical sunscreen that dries down to a clear finish. And I'm going to take one of my touch-up blotting papers just to blot away any excess oil that is on the skin. I'm going to be doing a little bit of something on my eyes, so I'm going to blot right over my eyes, and you can see there's some oil already on here. I did my skincare, applied my sunscreen about 45 minutes ago. I wanted to make sure it had ample time to really set into the skin, because when you are working on creating a look that's going to last and it's going to kind of be a little bit more resistant towards breaking up with sweat or oil, you want to make sure your products have time to set between your layers of application. Another new thing I'm going to be playing with today is I ordered some stuff from ColourPop, and one of them was this Stone Cold brush roll. So I'm going to be using those brushes today. So to start off, I'm going to take a little bit of my IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Pore Loose Powder. And this is a great trick. I did this trick a lot when I was working freelance. And I like to take a tiny amount of the powder and a large fluffy brush. And I like to really work that powder into the brush. And I'm going to dust this lightly all over my skin and my eyelids. So powders help to absorb a little bit of oil. They also add an extra layer of resistance between your skin and the makeup. I like to apply a tiny amount of a loose powder before I apply anything else, because this is going to help absorb some of the excess oils on the skin. It's, like I said, it's going to create that barrier between my skin and the makeup, so there's just a little extra something that the oils and sweat need to go through before they come into contact with the makeup. So with today being more of a special occasion makeup and I'm going to be playing with some new shadows, I'm going to prime my eyes first. I'm going to use the Hourglass Veil Eye Primer. So I am just going to apply this from lash to brow. I really enjoy this eye primer. It does have a light kind of peachy beige tone to it, so it's really nice for adding a little bit of a brightening effect. And I also like to take whatever's left over and run it through my brows, because that will help my brow product to stay on a little bit better. Another fun thing with today's video is I have a blemish. I don't really break out very often, so I never really have a good opportunity to share with you how I like to cover blemishes. So today we have that, and also I messed up the other day when I was trimming my beard, so now I have just a goatee almost, so we can look at how to match our foundation with our necks. I like primers for special occasions that are going to keep my oils at bay, kind of smooth the appearance of my skin a little bit, because I want my skin to look good in pictures. And then I also like something that's going to make my makeup stay on a little bit better. So I'm using the Tatcha Liquid Silk Canvas, and this mini sample size is still going. So I like to take one pump, spread it between my fingers, and then spread it out. Interesting thing with this primer, I was talking to one of my friends, And she was saying she really enjoyed this primer as well as the original liquid silk canvas because it added a little bit of a brightening effect to the skin, which I find interesting. I don't notice that on my skin tone, but my skin is quite fair and quite pinky. So hearing from someone with a different skin tone that this adds a little bit of a brightening effect, it's quite nice. So with the shades that I picked out, isn't really a shade that's a good all over lid shade. So I'm gonna grab my Viseart neutral matte palette, and I'm going to use the kind of light, kind of peachy nude color, and I'm using the ColourPop E22 brush, and I'm just going to work that all over my eyelid. So this color, since it's so close to my skin tone, I'm gonna apply this everywhere that I applied that primer, so straight from my lash line to the brow bone, and this is just going to help anything I apply on top blend a little bit easier. And if you don't have an eyeshadow this color, you can also use your favorite face powder, but I like using a shade that's close to my skin tone just because this is going to help kind of even out the color of my eyelid a little bit more. I've mentioned in other videos that I like to keep the natural colors in my eyelids because it adds a little bit of natural gradation to whatever I put on top. But when I'm working or when I'm doing a special event makeup for myself or a client, I really like to kind of almost blank out the canvas so I can let the colors that I'm applying on top really shine through. So to move into our Hourglass eyeshadow palette, I'm going to be using that same E22. So I'm going to be going into this shade from the Hourglass palette called May. And I'm just going to pick that up on the point of the brush. Interesting. So I'm noticing a little bit of a powdery pickup, and that doesn't really bother me as long as it doesn't drop all over my face. I'm fine with that. So I'm using my handheld mirror. I'm going to tilt my chin back, look down, and I want to establish kind of right where there's a natural kind of shading in my eye. I am going to work that shade right through there. So I like to just kind of work back and forth, windshield wiper motions, keeping most of the color right in this outer corner, and then using those circular motions to pull it inwards. Normally I like to kind of keep the color towards the outer 2/3 of my eye, and when I get to that inner third, there will be less on my brush, and I can just kind of pull it straight over towards the bridge of my nose. And I don't bring it too far out, so you can see my eye ends here, but I stop my shadow just short of that, so that way it's keeping the lifted effect to my eye. It's a nice shade. I like that. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And the windshield wiper motion, that's great for kind of spreading your color. And then when I move into these small circular buffing motions, it's going to help ever so slightly extend that eyeshadow upwards, but you're going to have less product moving up. So it's going to give you a natural kind of like transitioned effect. So it's keeping your makeup looking blended, and it's just going to kind of help everything blend out a little bit better. So next, I'm going to be using the ColourPop E25 brush. This is kind of like a flat shader brush. I am going to go into the shade B, which is more of a peachy shimmered color. I like to look down, press it in the center where I want the most color payoff, work my way up towards that last color I applied, and then spread everything else. And if you want to kind of keep, if you want a sharper edge, almost like if you want to kind of do like a faux cut crease effect, turn your brush so the edge is pointing up, and then you can use that to kind of etch right under. I don't really, that's not the look I'm going for today, so I'm going to kind of go a little bit more haphazard and just brush the color on. So you can see, that's a nice kind of like peachy tone. So I'm going to stick with that same brush, and I am going to go into the first lightest shade called Fox. And I'm going to concentrate this just on the inner corner of my eye. So for this one, I want to kind of press it and then buff in. And then I'm going to take any of that excess product, wipe it off on my microfiber cloth, and then use soft circular motions to blend that color into the first shade we applied on the lid. I'm noticing a few of the shimmer particles fell down, not a big deal. I'm going to use that powder brush I used to apply the all over powder, and they wipe way easy. Look at that. That is such a nice kind of bright color for the inner corner of the eye. That's something I will always love. It's just a nice brightening effect in the inner corner because you can see it just really kind of makes the inner eye pop. Now, you can easily leave this color here, but I've got two other shades in the eyeshadow palette that I want to play with. Now, I don't want like a defined liner effect, so I'm going to use a small kind of smudging brush, and this is the E29. So I'm going to work with this darker rosy brown shade called Yes, and this is a satin finish. So I'm going to tap off on the excess on my brush. I'm going to take my mirror, look down, and then start by gently kind of smudging this along my upper lash line. And I'm going to focus most of my color intensity just towards the center of the eye. And the reason I like to focus most of the color towards the center of my eye, because it's going to add the most depth of color right here toward the center of the eye, and that's going to almost give the eye a more lifted effect, because you're going to still have that definition across the lash line, except the most intensity is here, so it's going to draw the eye here, which in turn will give the eye a more open effect. So just buffing along right through there. We're going to do the same thing on the other eye. Interesting note that I'm noticing as I apply this. Right now with these four colors, this reminds me of a slightly more saturated version of the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Quad. I will say, compared to the Pillow Talk Quad, the shimmer shades are a tiny bit smoother, not enough to notice. For me, in my opinion, it's not a big enough difference to warrant owning both. However, I have this. I'm not going to return it. It's a nice one to have for comparative reasons, but this look is very similar to the shape, to the look I can get with the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk palette. And that one I believe is around $60 or $65 here in Canada. And for Hourglass, these singles, you buy them individually. It's you make your own eyeshadow palette. And each of these little pans are $39 a piece here in Canada, and they are 1 gram of product. When I put these into my spreadsheet, these are the most expensive eyeshadows I own per gram, and that's more expensive than Charlotte Tilbury, Chanel, Pat McGrath, or Natasha Denona. So these are pricey. So I'm going to go into the darkest shade called Pry using that same small smudge brush. And with this one, I'm going to tap off any of the excess, and I'm going to apply this on the lash line, but really focus it right over the colored part of my eye, because this has more of like a purpley kind of reddy burgundy tone to it. It's going to contrast the green of my eyes, creating a little bit more of a contrast, but it's also darker. It's also the darkest shade I've applied so far, and this is just going to help add that contrast to really give the eye a more open effect. So look down into my mirror, buff just over the center of the eye, and using a light pressure, this is just going to kind of effortlessly blend into that previous shade that we applied on the lash line. I'm going to take my brush, use that microfiber towel, wipe off any of the excess, get as much off as I can, and then I'm just take that brush now and run over my edges, really focus on kind of blending and blowing things out. You don't need to be precise. Just work and blend on your edges. The more you blend, the more soft focus and diffuse it's going to look. So to start off complexion, I'm going to be using the Auric Glow Lust, and this is in Morganite, the 2.0 variation. And one thing I love about this, like, it is a beautiful glass packaging. It's quite sturdy, and then the cap is a very snug fit, and it has some nice detailing to it. So I really like that. And I'm going to use the ColourPop F31 brush. Since I've not used this product before, I'm going to start with less and build up. I'm going to start by applying it just to the high points of my skin. It's really pretty. That's nice. That's very, very nice. For foundation, you want to look for a foundation that you've worn a few times, you know it's going to wear well. You're going to make sure that even if it's a full coverage, it's not heavy. You want something that's going to lay quite thinly on the skin, so the skin can almost breathe in aspects. YSL All Hours, and I wear the shade BR20. I'm going to stick with that same brush, ColourPop F31 brush, and I am going to take one pump on the back of my hand, and I'm just going to kind of stipple into the edge, pick up a little bit of product, and focus this where I want coverage. You can see it has quite a bit of coverage. So I like to kind of start by placing it in the areas where I have the most concern, and I'll let it set, kind of like how I do with concealer. I apply it where I want it, let it set, let it start drying down So that way when I blend out, I'll keep the coverage where I want it. And I'm going to be wearing a concealer, so I'm not going to take this under my eyes, because the more product I apply to my skin, it's going to give it more opportunity to crease and not look so great later. So I'm going to really take my time, spread this out. And a great thing with working with a sheer layer of product, you can really kind of customize how much coverage you're getting, where you're getting it. Generally, when I'm working with clients, I don't apply a lot of product all over the skin. I rather work in thin layers, building it up where it's needed. I'm enjoying how this looks in my viewfinder compared to my makeup area, because I film with studio lighting and sometimes things can just look too perfected. Here I've got a small ring light that is my tripod to hold my iPhone on. I can see the texture of my skin. I can see how the makeup is looking on my skin, which I'm a fan of. So I'm just going to continue working that one pump of foundation I have over my skin, taking my time, spreading it out. So this does a pretty nice job at covering up the blemish I have. I am going to go through and use a concealer just to really perfect the skin. And even though this is more special occasion, I'm not worried about completely blanking out my natural skin. I want my skin to still look like real skin. And even though I'm gonna apply my concealer under my eyes, I don't want there to be a harsh step between my skin and the foundation. So I'm gonna take a little bit extra effort to blend under there. For me, that is more than enough coverage. I'm just gonna now, for my own peace of mind, take what's left and I'm going to run this on my neck. I don't want to take it too far down because tonight I'm wearing a pair of shoes I've only worn twice and I want to wear them again, and I want them to kind of be the star of the show. So for my upper part of my outfit, I'm just wearing a simple black blazer that's slightly oversized with just a black v-neck t-shirt. So I want my neck to blend, but I don't want to take too much product too far down because that could transfer. And just for extra peace of mind, because my ears are always red, I'm going to run a little bit of extra product just over my ears. And if you see me looking off to the side, my mirror is over there because that's the only place I really have to set it. So I'm gonna leave foundation there for now. I'm happy with that. I'm actually very happy with that. If I wanted to, I could just take my brush and kind of pull up the product I have on my cheeks a little bit to add a little bit of coverage under the eyes. For concealer, I'm using the Lancome Effercescence Waterproof. I have the shade, I have Light Buff, I believe is what it's called. And then to apply my concealer, I'm gonna be using the ColourPop E24. You need a tiny amount, teeny tiny, about that much. And I've seen on TikTok that the way that I've always kind of like to apply concealer is kind of trending, where you really only focus on the inner corner of your eye and then the outer corner if you need it. I always like to apply a little bit on this outer corner just because it kind of gives a little bit of lifting effect, because most people have a little bit of a shadow, like a red shadow that goes down the outer corner of the eyes. So I like to apply a little bit there, and then whatever's left I'll kind of spread it just under the eye. I don't take it all the way up. I like to keep the natural coloring of my eye because it just kind of keeps the eyes looking more open. So this brush does kind of eat up some of the product. So I am going to take a tiny bit more of my concealer, and I'm just going to use the very point of my brush, and I'm going to kind of pinpoint right over that blemish I have. I'm going to let that set for a second, come in closer to the mirror, see if there's anywhere else I want a little bit more coverage. And then just for good measure, because I know makeup on my chin tends to wear off a little bit quicker, I'm just going to spread that out. And then I'm going to go with my foundation brush, pick up whatever is on my product, press over that concealer on my chin, on my forehead where I applied it, and then with less pressure on my brush, hold it really close to the end, just going to gently press over where I concealed. And I'm going to press over my under eyes with the residual product that's on my brush, just to kind of make everything kind of marry together and look the best it can. So to set my face in place and really kind of help keep oil at bay, I'm going to use a little bit of the Fenty Invisimatte powder. I'm going to use that first powder brush, the ColourPop F28. I feel like since I applied that Auric Glow Lust so sheerly under this matte foundation, it's kind of cut back on the shine a little bit. So I'm going to use a little bit of a powder highlight. So my go-to powder highlight whenever I've got a special occasion is my trusty Laura Mercier Matte Radiance 01, and I'm using the ColourPop F33 brush to hug the high points of my cheek. Since I'm taking pictures, I want to draw attention to the upper half of my face to detract from any fluff I have down there. So I'm going to kind of hug at top of my cheekbone into the temple. When I'm working for a special occasion or anything like that, I want to take my time and really blend everything into the skin. Because most products, as you blend them and buff them, they thin out. They start to absorb into the skin. So they just give you more of a natural look, which is what I like. Because when I go to an event, even though I want to look more perfected and I want my clients to look perfected, I tend to like things to look as realistic as I can. So for bronzer, when I was going through my drawer, because you know, it feels like since the beginning of 2020, the only kind of special event I've done makeup for is when I got married. And the bronzer I used then is no longer available. So I was looking at my bronzer collection. I'm like, what bronzer do I trust for a special occasion? And I immediately went to the Milani Silky Matte Bronzer in 01. So I'm going to use that with a ColourPop F29. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that. And then this brush picked up a bit, so I'm going to tap it off. Start lightly, kind of over the back half of my cheekbone, slightly above where you would contour. I'm going to use this as like a kind of like a bronzer, like a bronzer contour. But I don't want to contour because this does have too much warmth for me to be a contour. So I'm going to start by kind of stamping and stippling this on where I want it. I like to really kind of think about where sun would hit the face. So when you're applying bronzer, think about where the sun would hit your face. Look at your face from the side profile view and you can see where it comes forward. So you can see my forehead comes furthest forward right there. So I like to make sure I'm bronzing there because that's where the sun would hit my face. And I like to buff into the hairline just to keep everything kind of smooth. And I pull my products directly into the hairline so there isn't a distinct start and stop of where my product begins and ends. Go back over, blend the bronzer applied on my cheeks up and back because I want to kind of create like this elongated kind of C shape. So by working to blend these products in, they're just going to look more in harmony together. So I want to kind of balance out the center zone of my face. So I'm going to take a little bit and then I'm just going to dot in my product. Barely anything comes off. Pick up a little bit less. Run it over the bridge of my nose because I get some there. Tip of my chin. And just to keep things even because 2020, I got a little extra fluff down here. So I'm going to tilt my chin back, think about a triangular shape through here, and I'm going to use that to kind of warm up my neck so it's balanced with my face, but this is going to also add a little bit of discreet contouring. And then I buff that right into the chin. For me, it's an easy one. Facial hair, I can just blend it into it. And then if I take it a little bit lower, it's okay because the shirt I'm wearing is a V-neck, so I don't need to worry about makeup getting on the collar. And I will note that today I'm using a lot of brushes, mostly because I'm kind of playing as I do this. So I want to try out as many of the brushes from the brush kit as I can. So a lot of times, if I'm doing my makeup in my everyday life, I would have used this for my all over setting powder, my bronzer, my blush. I might even pinch to do my highlight. I might use my finger to buff my highlighting powder in. But today I'm just playing. I want to kind of play with the brushes. So to apply my brush, to apply blush, I'm going to use another brush. This is the ColourPop F30. And I want to add a warm kind of pinky tone because when I get sun, my skin does turn kind of like a pinky red color. The shadows I have on my eye, even though they are in the brown, kind of warm, rosy brown family, they still have that rosy kind of pinkiness to them. So I want a blush that's going to be harmonious with it. And since I'm going to get oily, I'm going to get sweaty, I want to make sure I'm not adding too much glow to the cheeks. So I applied a highlight. That's going to be my cheek glow. So for the cheeks themselves, I'm using a matte kind of neutral pink color, and this is by NARS, and this is the shade Behave. So sheer mount, start kind of right under the iris of my eye, or the colored part, and I'm going to buff this up and back towards my temples, point it right into the hairline. This placement is going to help kind of give lift to the skin. Or this kind of placement is going to kind of help lift. I've seen this also on TikTok, and some people are calling it draping. Some people are calling it blush contouring. There's so many trends that are on TikTok that they've been around for such a long time. Just like any trends within like fashion, decor, things come back. So don't be afraid to get out and experiment. This is a trick I use a lot on, especially with people with rounder faces, but I also love this for people who are more mature because you're adding this lifted angle, so it's going to really kind of draw attention upwards. This is also a great kind of trick if you're going for that kind of like foxy eye makeup that was popular a little while back. Or if you're like me, you have a little extra fluff and you just want to pull your attention upwards. So this side, I got a little heavier handed with the blush than I did on that side, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And then whatever's left of my brush, I'm going to run it over my bridge, over my chin, buff it through my eyes just to keep my colors in harmony. So for brows, I did bring down a brow pencil. I'm too lazy for that. Like, I don't really do a lot with brows, so I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to grab that small E29 brush that I used to buff kind of the shadow across my upper lash line as like a liner. And I'm going to go in with this kind of, I'm going to mix together this kind of taupey brown and this more neutrally brown together. And I'm just going to use those for my brow color. And this is a great trick, using eyeshadow as brow color, great easy trick. So I'm going to kind of place it right here at the outer edge of my brow where I want the most color. And I'm going to brush backwards through the brow. So you can see there, it fills it in. Brows look a little unruly right now just because they've been brushed all different ways. But it's a quick, easy way to kind of fill in the brows without making it too much. So I also just realized I forgot to apply a lip balm on screen, which I meant to do, but I've been loving this since I received it in the mail. This is the Huda Beauty Silk Balm. Nice formula. It's in the shade Blush, which I think is the only color they have. But for me, it's pretty much like a clear. It might have a little bit of a warm pinky tone, but Intombable Intense in the shade Brown. I'm just going to apply a thin coat across on my upper lashes only. You can leave the look here. I brought a lip color down, so I'm going to blot away this balm. And then for lips, I grabbed the Laura Mercier Longwear Lip Pencil in the shade Baby Lips. I did order this from Nordstrom in the shade Rosewood, but I was still really curious, and it was like one of those really late night shopping trips on Sephora's app, so I decided to grab this shade too. I'm just going to run this over my lips. It's a nice one. So this color is a really nice one. If you were someone who loves shades like Pillow Talk or Mac Dervish, this is a very similar color, except it's a slightly warmer neutral pink. And then to cool it down, kind of make it a little bit more of like the color I like, I'm going to use the Bare Minerals. This is the Bare Minerals Mineralist Lip Gloss Balm in the shade Ingenuity. And I'm just going to run that over my bottom lip and I'm done. Hey y'all, I wanted to do a check-in. I've just gotten home. It's just after 10:30. I've had this look on for about 9.5 hours. And let's take a look at how it wore. So overall, I resisted touching up or doing anything with my makeup. So I applied it earlier on camera and I've left it alone. It has been hot. I've been sweaty. I wore a mask. But you can kind of see foundation. It's sheared down a little bit, but nothing crazy. Tiny bit of transfer, not bad. Compared to some of the other foundations I've done wear tests with, this is one of the best. The eyeshadow held up pretty well. I noticed on this side over here, I got a little bit more creasing. Foundation has like gotten shiny around the nose, sheared out a little bit. Nothing crazy. Lip completely worn off because had a mask on, had dinner, had cake because it was a birthday. It was... I'm happy with how everything looked. Eyebrows, for the lack of effort I put into them, they've stayed on really well, except for, you can see I've got like 2 that have gone like crazy. Thank you so much for staying tuned. I hope you don't mind the change of scenery. I hope some of these kind of oily breakthrough tips for keeping your makeup looking good all summer is helpful, and I will see you later. Bye y'all.